Welcome to Rapid Report, your go-to source for in-depth global news and real-time analysis. Today we're covering a story that is shaking the world, the recent U.S.-Israeli strike on Iran, an operation that has triggered a structural crisis, not just a headline, not just a flash in the news cycle. From the activation of Iranian sleeper cells to the shifting balance of drone warfare, and even the controversial involvement of private interests benefiting from wartime demand, this conflict is reshaping the geopolitical landscape. Gulf states are openly rejecting U.S. pressure, energy markets are in turmoil, and the ripple effects are being felt across every continent. Stay with us as we break down the military, economic, and political fallout in detail, explaining why this is a moment that could define the decade. And before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share it with friends and colleagues. You don't want to miss any updates on this global crisis as it unfolds. The U.S.-Israeli strike on Iran sparks a global structural crisis. The recent U.S.-Israeli strike on Iran has not merely created a temporary flurry of news headlines. It has triggered a profound structural rupture in global geopolitics. Dubbed Operation Epic Fury, this coordinated military action has exposed the fragility of established alliances, the asymmetry of modern warfare, and the intertwining of politics with private business interests. Analysts now warn that the conflict could become long, economically devastating, and politically isolating for the United States. A global turning point, not a news cycle. Scenes from across the Middle East tell the story of a world in flux. Refinery fires in the Gulf, protests in Tehran, and a surge in oil prices impacting markets in Europe, Asia, and North America. Observers describe the moment as a structural rupture, signaling a shift in international relations, military doctrine, and economic equilibrium. This is not a story that will fade in 24 hours. It is a complex, multi-layered crisis reshaping the global order. Operation Epic Fury, the strike that changed the Middle East. Within the first 10 days, Operation Epic Fury dramatically reshaped regional dynamics. U.S. and Israeli forces successfully assassinated Iran's supreme leader alongside senior military and political officials. The operation was justified by Washington and Tel Aviv as a preventive measure to stop Iran from achieving nuclear and missile immunity, a capability that could have altered the balance of power in the Middle East for decades. The immediate consequences were severe. Iranian retaliation fears surged with the potential for sleeper cells to be activated both inside and outside Iran. Energy markets reacted instantly, with crude oil and natural gas prices spiking as Gulf refineries temporarily shut down for security reviews. Regional political alignments were tested, as Gulf states faced intense U.S. pressure to support the military campaign. Sleeper cell activation. A shadow war emerges. Perhaps the most alarming development is the potential activation of Iranian sleeper cells. U.S. intelligence agencies have intercepted encrypted signals believed to function as activation triggers, though the exact targets, timing, and locations remain unknown. In response, the FBI and Pentagon have elevated alert levels domestically and abroad, signaling that the threat is not only theoretical but immediate. Security analysts warn that these cells could carry out operations ranging from cyber attacks to targeted assassinations, potentially destabilizing countries far beyond the Middle East. The scenario paints a picture of a war fought not only on the battlefield but also through clandestine networks, a new form of asymmetrical warfare that is difficult to contain or predict. Iran's drone advantage, the asymmetry of modern conflict. While Iran has suffered losses in conventional missile exchanges, it has gained a strategic edge in drone warfare. The country reportedly operates around 70,000 drones, which it has deployed against targets in Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Dubai. U.S. defenses relying on interceptors that cost millions per unit are struggling to keep pace. This asymmetry presents several risks. Prolonged conflict. The cost imbalance makes sustained U.S. intervention economically and militarily taxing. Economic disruption. Drone strikes against ports, refineries, and supply chains threaten the stability of global energy and trade systems. Psychological warfare. Persistent drone attacks increase regional insecurity, eroding public confidence in the ability of local governments and allied forces to maintain stability. The Trump family and wartime profiteering. At the same time, Trump's sons have taken a drone company public, coinciding with rising demand for unmanned systems due to both the conflict and U.S. policies banning Chinese drones. While the market opportunity is clear, the timing raises ethical and political concerns. Are policymakers creating conditions that directly benefit private business ventures? Does profiting from wartime demand undermine public trust in government and military decision-making? How will this influence future defense policy if private financial interests become entangled with national security strategies? These questions are particularly acute given the optics of a high-profile political family directly benefiting from a conflict they helped shape, setting a precedent with long-term implications for governance and public perception. Gulf states break from U.S. pressure. A striking geopolitical development is the public rebuke from UAE billionaires and officials, particularly towards Senator Lindsey Graham and other U.S. policymakers who urged Gulf participation. Statements emphasizing that Gulf states were neither consulted nor willing to engage in the conflict mark a significant rupture in U.S.-Gulf relations. The implications are profound. Strategic isolation. Washington's traditional leverage in the Gulf is weakened. Economic recalibration. Gulf nations may pivot toward alternative alliances or energy policies that reduce dependence on U.S. support. Political signaling. The refusal highlights a growing willingness among regional powers to prioritize sovereignty over alliance obligations. Two possible futures analysts outline two broad scenarios for the near-term trajectory of the conflict. Path 1. Rapid negotiation and stabilization. Diplomatic pressure leads to reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and normalized oil flows. Regional tensions are contained through negotiated security guarantees. U.S. credibility is maintained, albeit with reduced influence over Gulf partners. Path 2. Prolonged conflict and economic shock. Sleeper cell attacks escalate unpredictably across multiple regions. Energy markets experience sustained volatility, impacting economies worldwide. The U.S. faces political isolation as allies pursue independent strategies, undermining long-standing alliances. Global consequences already unfolding. Even before a formal resolution, the effects of Operation Epic Fury are being felt worldwide. Oil-dependent economies have already faced price shocks, with inflationary pressures in food, transport, and industrial sectors. Supply chains in aviation, shipping, and agriculture are disrupted, creating cascading challenges for global commerce. Military personnel face elevated operational risks as asymmetric threats, including drones and sleeper cell operations, challenge traditional defense paradigms. These developments suggest that the conflict is no longer a regional skirmish. It is a global structural crisis with implications for economic stability, security doctrine, and international diplomacy. A world at a crossroads. The U.S.-Israeli strike on Iran has illuminated the complexities of modern conflict, asymmetrical warfare, economic interdependence, and the intersection of private enterprise with national policy. As the Middle East braces for the long-term consequences of Operation Epic Fury, the international community faces a choice: navigate toward stabilization or risk entering a prolonged period of geopolitical turbulence and economic instability. For policymakers, analysts, and global citizens alike, the lesson is clear. This is not a news cycle to be consumed and forgotten. It is a structural event that will shape the world for years to come. The evolving nature of asymmetric warfare. The U.S.-Israeli strike has underscored a fundamental shift in modern military conflict: the asymmetry between conventional power and low-cost, high-impact technology. While the U.S. retains superior missile systems and air power, Iran's vast drone fleet demonstrates that quantity, ingenuity, and persistence can offset technological inferiority. Cost imbalance. U.S. missile interceptors cost millions per engagement, while Iran's drones are comparatively inexpensive. Each successful drone strike forces the U.S. and allied forces into repeated high-cost defense cycles. Psychological warfare. Constant drone threats generate uncertainty and fear in civilian populations and military personnel alike, eroding confidence in traditional deterrence models. Operational complexity. Drone attacks disrupt logistics, command structures, and maritime operations, complicating conventional planning. This asymmetry highlights a long-term strategic vulnerability. Nations can inflict disproportionate disruption without facing decisive retaliation. Sleeper cells, the hidden multiplier. The reported activation of Iranian sleeper cells represents a low-visibility, high-risk threat that could extend the conflict far beyond the Middle East. Unlike drones or missiles, sleeper cells operate clandestinely, targeting critical infrastructure, intelligence networks, or symbolic locations in the U.S., Europe, and neighboring regions. Deterrence limitations. Traditional military superiority offers limited protection against clandestine attacks. Global reach. Signals suggest cells could be activated in multiple countries simultaneously, forcing allied nations into a reactive posture. Escalation risk. Misinterpretation of cell activity could trigger disproportionate military responses, inadvertently expanding the conflict. The existence of sleeper networks transforms the war into a multidimensional crisis, blending kinetic, cyber, and clandestine operations. Geopolitical realignments in the Gulf. The UAE and other Gulf states' refusal to support U.S.-led operations signals a tectonic shift in regional alliances. Decades of U.S. dominance in Gulf security are now being challenged by a desire for autonomous regional strategy. Sovereignty. Assertion. Gulf leaders are demonstrating independence from U.S. pressure, seeking to avoid entanglement in conflicts that may jeopardize their domestic stability. Alternative alliances. There is growing interest in partnerships with powers like China, Russia, and even India, particularly in energy, trade, and defense cooperation. Strategic friction, U.S. leverage in arms deals, intelligence sharing, and military basing could be weakened if Gulf nations choose selective cooperation over unconditional alignment. This rupture may represent the beginning of a broader reconfiguration of Middle Eastern geopolitics, where historical U.S. influence is gradually diminished. Economic shockwaves and global energy security. The immediate impact on global energy markets is evident, but the long-term structural consequences are far more profound. Crude oil and LNG supply risks. Persistent drone strikes on infrastructure and the threat of regional escalation threaten to raise energy prices for months or years, accelerating inflation worldwide. Supply chain vulnerability. Disruption in ports, shipping lanes, and aviation networks reverberates across multiple sectors, from agriculture to industrial manufacturing. Financial contagion. Rising energy costs, coupled with geopolitical uncertainty, may trigger market volatility, affecting bonds, equities, and commodity-linked currencies. In essence, the war introduces a global economic fragility that cannot be contained by local diplomacy alone. The ethics of war profiteering. The Trump family's involvement in a publicly traded drone company presents a rare intersection of policy, profit, and military conflict. This raises several pressing questions. Are U.S. policymakers implicitly incentivizing the private sector to benefit from wartime conditions? How do such private interests affect the impartiality of U.S. foreign policy decisions? Could perceptions of profit-driven conflict erode public trust in democratic institutions and military leadership? The optics of this scenario are likely to dominate domestic and international debate, further complicating the administration's strategic narrative. Strategic implications for U.S. foreign policy. The combination of military asymmetry, sleeper cell threats, and fractured alliances has strategic consequences that may reshape U.S. foreign policy. Loss of deterrence. Credibility. The inability to swiftly suppress drone attacks or predict sleeper cell actions undermines confidence in U.S. military dominance. Isolation risks. Gulf states' refusal to engage and broader international skepticism could leave the U.S. strategically isolated in a conflict it initiated. Long-term military doctrine shift. The U.S. may need to prioritize low-cost, adaptive responses to counter asymmetric threats, shifting resources away from conventional superiority towards scalable deterrence and intelligence capabilities. Possible scenarios moving forward, beyond the immediate two paths already outlined, several nuanced possibilities emerge. 1. Regional containment with economic mitigation, limited engagement with Iran, targeted negotiations, and energy hedging stabilize markets, but underlying tensions persist. 2. Proxy escalation. Iran may escalate indirectly through proxies in Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq, creating a multi-front conflict without formal declarations. 3. Extended global crisis. Sleeper cells and continued drone warfare could trigger international incidents, prompting NATO or UN involvement and dragging global powers into a prolonged economic and military standoff. That wraps up today's analysis on the U.S.-Israeli strike and the structural crisis it has triggered. As we've seen, this is far more than a temporary conflict. It's a turning point with far-reaching consequences for global security, energy markets, and international diplomacy. We'll continue monitoring the developments closely, from drone warfare and sleeper cell alerts to political realignments in the Gulf, and bring you updates as they happen. If you found this report insightful, make sure to subscribe to Rapid Report, hit the like button, and share this video with anyone who wants to stay informed about the real story behind the headlines. Remember, staying informed is the first step to understanding a rapidly changing world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next report.